Good afternoon and welcome to this session on how to be a standout career, how to be a standout candidate in this current interview market. I'm joined today by three lovely ladies who are going to give you a slightly different perspective on the interview process in the current market. So Jane is currently having interviews, so she will come up with her personal experience, which I think will be highly valuable. Claire, as a career coach, what would she prep one of her clients for in terms to prepare to be a standout candidate? And Karen's going to come from the perspective of having recently been in the market recruiting talent. What would she be looking for? So that's the view from today. My name's Alison Ainsworth. I'm going to be hosting this session. I am an executive coach and a career transition expert, and I will let the ladies introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off with the first question of how to be a standout candidate in the market. So, Karen, do you want to go first?
Hi, lovely to be with you all this afternoon. My name is Karen. Up until recently, I was working in the legal sector as an HR director. And I have recently had a career change, and I'm now an executive coach and psychotherapist.
Thank you. And Claire?
Hi, my name is Claire Endicott, and before being a transition coach, I used to be a human resource business partner. So I was involved in interviewing people from originally sort of administrators and more latterly executive directors and board level members, and hopefully bringing all that knowledge to help people sparkle at interview now. As I said, I'm a career transition coach, and I'm also a trained executive coach.
Thank you. And Jane, do you want to do a quick intro? Is Jane frozen? She looks like she might have frozen. Are you back with us, Jane? Oh, it looks like she might have frozen. So,
hi, I'm Jane, and I'm having technical difficulty.
We've jinxed you, Jane, because we were just talking about technology being, a wonderful thing when it works. So, I'm going to go on to the first question and let Jane rejoin. So, Claire, do you want to start with this one? Why do you have to stand out in the current market?
So I think most people would agree that the market at the moment is quite tight. So, obviously the most companies that you want to apply for have a great reputation, culture, probably really interested in their employees' development. So what's attracted you will also have attracted a range of other fantastic candidates. So when I'm prepping people for that question, how to be a standout candidate, I would always say to acknowledge it. I am sure you have a fantastic slate of candidates, but obviously I believe that I have the skills and experience to be able to really deliver on this role. And then I think it's also really good if you can share some of perhaps the research you might have done, why you feel you'd be a great cultural fit if you know somebody, so that you can really show that you've really thought about it and that there is this great synergy between you and the company, and you can sort of sparkle. You can be the one that stands out, that they definitely want to hire.
Yeah, perfect. And Karen, if I come to you from that perspective, what are you? What things are you looking for when you're recruiting talent? What stands out for you?
Yeah, so I'd echo everything that Claire said. I'd also say that I think in the current economic climate, employers are being increasingly selective about the people that they are choosing to bring into their organisation. So whereas in the past, you may have looked at somebody and thought, yeah, okay, they're good enough. I think in the current market, with the current challenges that employers are facing around headcount and budgets, etc., that actually the person they are looking to bring in needs to be the absolute best person they can bring through, and actually not recruiting and leaving a post vacant is often seen as preferential to having somebody for the sake of having somebody. So I think that's why that standout piece is really, really key, is making that real connection between the skills and experience that you have as a candidate and really showcasing that to the employer so that they are really wanting to have you as part of their team.
Yeah, absolutely. Jane, welcome back. And we are talking about why do you have to be a standout career in the current market? What's your experience been?
So I've recently started job hunting, and my experience is that I've been competing against hundreds of candidates for every role. So, just to even have someone spend more than 10 seconds on a CV or you have to be able to really show that you match exactly to the job description. And then I think once you get past that first 20, you get down to the bottom 20, you really need to get hold of someone to understand what they're after, because a job description to me, in my current job search is, can you do everything? But what they don't highlight is what their top 3 priorities are. So you might have a job description that talks AI all the time, but then the feedback will be like, well, that wasn't actually so important about, can you handle politics and the leadership slog? So again, trying to speak to someone, A, so you're known, and B, so you can get hold of what they're really after, is really important. Thank you.
Well, it's a great point, Jana. I mean, I often, in my background's HR, and often I look at a job description and think, really, do they really want all of that on there? Are they looking for the Holy Grail in that sense that not everybody is going to tick every single box? So great tip there in terms of, checking out what are they really looking for. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question. How do you prepare? Because we all know that preparation for interviews is key. All those sayings about not preparing is preparing to fail, really. So if again, I come to you, Claire, in terms of what advice would you give to a candidate in terms of how you prepare to be a standout in the market currently?
I think I would focus on 3 dimensions. One, sort of preparation, practice, positive psychology. With clients, I would say, if you're thinking about a company, think about their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What are the company's values? What are they really proud of? And what's their unique selling point? What do they want to, for you to acknowledge or be able to speak about? And I guess key competitors is another thing that's probably worth doing some thought about. For more senior candidates, I would say, do a bit of horizon scanning. What might happen in 2025, 2026 that might change their business model, so that you're really adept at any kind of question that might come your way, including ones on strategy. If you're perhaps doing a public sector role or thinking along those lines, maybe a PESTLE analysis might be really helpful for you. And that's political, economic, sociological, technological, legal, and environmental. And to look at that through that lens can be helpful. Preparation. Now, we're going to talk a bit about more how you kind of show up a bit later. But just to say that I know of one headhunter that always asks for the first meeting to be online. And that is because he wants to analyze your backdrop. So if you're saying one of your key skills are that you have great attention to detail, you're a project manager, and your backdrop doesn't reflect that, there's already kind of a dissonance, a kind of an outtrade. So think about the preparation. What are you showing somebody if you're online? Obviously, practice. Gary Player, for those of you who remember, was a very well-known golf professional, and he said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. And I'm very lucky to have a client at the moment who said that when I shared this, said he had seen Gary Player last year, and he's a man in his 80s now, going and just practicing for about 45 minutes his putting. So he still practices what he preaches. Malcolm Gladwell, for those who are familiar with him, said Practice is not the thing you do when you're good. It is the thing that makes you good. So also think about, I work with clients on positive psychology. There's something about visualization techniques, working on your gravitas, thinking about how your body changes your mind changes your behavior, and your behavior changes your outcomes. Now, that might sound all a little bit woo, but actually it can be really powerful. I'm currently reading a book, and there are other great books available, but I'm just sharing this with you, by Steve Dalton. In his book, The Job Closer, he says in the first 5 minutes, 30% of hiring decisions are taken. At the end of 15 minutes, 60% of hiring decisions are taken. So often, the first question you might get, apart from small talk, how was the journey, etc., if you're meeting in person, might be, walk me through your history, tell me about yourself. And that's supposed to be a gentle opener, but the reality is quite a lot of candidates really struggle with that because they don't enjoy talking about themselves. So I always say to them, it's fascinating, I think, to hear why people made the decisions they did. What is the golden thread that's running through your career, why you made those decisions? So by all means, sprinkle this with competencies, skills, etc., that you learned. But people respond to stories. So think through that story really well. Then obviously there's motivation questions. Why do you want the job? And that obviously should be quite authentic, should be quite organic. You should really think about that and spend some time doing that. And again, that's absolutely vital. Then you move on to competencies, which is, one acronym is situation, task, action, result. Ideally prepare 2 stories or 2 vignettes for each competencies, so you make sure you never repeat a story or vignette. Always have in your back pocket, what's the L, what's the learning. I would never offer that up because it does imply that you could have done something slightly better. But be aware, continuous improvement can be a competency that people are looking for. And then there's another acronym, which is CAR, which I don't know whether everyone's familiar with, which is challenge, action, result. And here in your actions, you're demonstrating all those fantastic competencies that you have. Questions for the interview, I think we'll leave till later, but that's a few thoughts that I'd like to have shared with you.
Brilliant, Claire. Thank you for that. Great reference to STAR methodology and to CAR. I think they're both really helpful in preparation. So Jane, do you want to tell us what it's like in terms of your experience? How do you prepare?
So I agree with everything you said, for sure, and you're amazing. I think what I've tried to do is put myself in the employer's shoes. So do they need? What are they looking for? What are their challenges? And how can I support all that? So take myself out of my head. It's not about me getting the job. They need to hire someone X, Y, and Z. How can I deliver that? And then I guess the only other thing is read the room. People maybe, like you've said, a bit more gravitas, a bit more energy, a bit more political. So I think some of that is where I could definitely improve, reading the room a bit better, because you might need to tweak your authenticity slightly to be able to try to fit in with the people around the table. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the word energy, Jane, I always say is really important. I think that's a massive differentiator when I'm looking at candidates. If somebody's energetic and enthusiastic about the job, I'm more likely to be offering it to them than the person who doesn't appear to want it. So, but Karen, your experience, what do you see when you're in terms of talent? Can you tell whether somebody's prepared?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can tell. And I think, when you strip it back, what an interview is really about is you testing as the candidate whether the organisation's a good fit for you, as well as the organisation assessing whether you're a good fit for them. And so in some ways, I always used to say at the start of interviews when I was interviewing people, this is a chance for you to get to know us and us to get to know you a little bit more, and kind of take it back from that very kind of the point around energy and the environment that's created. I think that's really important. But you can absolutely tell when a candidate has or has not prepared. And, one of the key questions, one of the really telling questions for me that is pretty typical, I think, at the start of an interview is when you ask a candidate to walk you through their CV. And I've had some brilliant examples of that where somebody has picked out key points from their career history, aligned to the person's specification, aligned to the brief they've received, and it's really on point and really gives you a great summary of how you as the candidate have the skills and experience that are reflected in what you're looking for. I've also had some really, really lengthy, like 25-minute monologues of everything that you've done, really not aligned to the role, that really don't show that this candidate has really thought about what it is about this role that they can bring and why they're interested in that position as well. And building on that, I like the STAR method that was just referenced. You can really tell when you're asking questions if a candidate has prepared answers grounded in that. And the key thing that I think some candidates miss out on is the impact. So that storytelling piece is really important, but really being clear about the impact of whatever it is you're describing, what changed, what was different, how did it move the dial, what was the result. So really being clear about that action-orientated piece. But the danger with over-preparing, of course, is that you answer the question that you prepared for and not the answer that you've been asked for. So bear that in mind. So I've had that quite a bit as well. Candidates answering the question that they want to answer rather than the one you've asked. And then I'd also say just avoid describing generalities and be really clear about the impact that you had. There's often quite a lot of candidates that talk about the we did this, we did that, which is great because you're part of the team, but you're trying to sell your strengths and your impact. So focusing on that as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karen. Some great tips in there. Quite often when I was interviewing, I would say, please don't say we, please talk about what you did, as a prompt, because it is hard. We do feel like we're showing off sometimes, particularly if it is a team effort. And you think, well, it was we, not I, but it is about how you evidence what you did in that action space. So yeah, some brilliant tips in there. Thank you. We said we'd come on to the kind of how do I want to show up at interview. And by that is, well, take it from there really, guys. So how do I want to show up? Karen, do you want to start with that one? Because we talked a little bit when we were thinking about this, about brand and things like that. So what are you looking for when you meet a candidate?
I think it's that real energy point that we sort of touched upon earlier. So, the minute you meet the person, how's that conversation going to be between, if you're in person, that walk to the interview room, the eye contact, shaking hands, how you've presented yourself, not only with the interviewers. I would also say, think about the minute you walk in the door, you are being observed. And quite often as an interviewer, I would ask the reception team or the security team, how was that person with you when they came in? Because that gives me a really good sense of, are you genuine and true in how you are broadly, or have you just been nice to me because I'm the person that's interviewing you? So that comes to that point around culture and cultural fit and alignment. And I think that piece around energy, as I say, energy and eye contact, and really bringing out that you've done your research. And so, look at what's in the building. What's that telling you? What is advertised in the foyer? Look around you when you're in the building. What signs and clues can that give you to the research you've already done, which can give you a hook in to say, oh, I've seen that's really important to you on your website, and it's great to see you've got that signposted here. So really look around you. What are the visual clues that the business is giving you about what's important to them, and hook into that? And if you're online, making sure that your background is, looking smart. I've had some people in their kitchens with their cupboard doors open so I can see, their baked beans and spice rack and everything else that's in there. Really think about where you're sitting, because in effect, you're effectively telling the potential employer, this is where I work, this is how I turn up to work. So really think about, what are you wearing? How are you presenting? Often, when you're online, people are only seeing you from here. So this bit becomes, really critical in terms of your energy and how, don't lean in too much, but, this kind of lean back is too casual. So all those small things are giving interviewers clues about who you are as a person.
Yeah, brilliant. Jane, did you resonate with any of that? How do you show up currently?
I'm very American, so I talk to everyone and get the scoop. But also, I look at it as, is this a place I want to work with, the people I want to work with? And that does include everyone from receptionist to the person you're interviewing with. So very friendly, open, and then trying to glean as much as from the people you speak to and your surroundings. I think just really being open to listen a little bit. I know you're ready to go in an interview, but some feedback I've gotten is maybe I could have listened a bit more or read the room a bit, or, just again, like you have to be a bit more flexible as you're in these situations. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I mean, I think the reading the room is such a great point as well, Karen made. I also interviewed somebody recently, and the first "tell me about yourself" question was 15 minutes, and I thought, you're not looking at me because you can tell I've switched off. I was hoping for 5, not 15. That's my tip there. And yeah, reading the room and making sure that you are recognizing whether anybody's still following the story you're telling. and Claire, what about you in terms of showing up for the interview? What's brand differentiating for you?
I think I love the comments both of you are making about sort of energy. I think it's really important to be believable, to be authentic, to showing your enthusiasm. And on a really practical point, I know that sometimes people say, what should I wear? And I know during COVID, people felt, oh, I should just, the interview for my first interview was really very informal. They were just wearing a polo shirt. Should I do the same? And I would say, you need to be smarter because the people interviewing you have the job. And another tip might be, if you go and look, and it's always good to actually maybe do the journey to the interview slot, so into the place where you're having an interview day, so that you make sure you can get there on time, etc. But see what people are wearing. There is a kind of modus operandi, there is a kind of the right thing to wear, but always go slightly smarter than those individuals that you might see coming out, because you're pitching for the job.
Yeah, it's a great point. I always say, if in doubt, dress up a level. So,
yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So how do I leave the recruiter with a good impression? So when you come to the end of the interview and part of you is desperate to just get out that door because it's finished, how do you go about leaving them with a good impression? Jane, do you want to share your experience first?
I would be really gracious, friendly, positive for their time. And also hopefully leave them at the end questions that make them think you're a really good candidate, because that's usually how interviews finish. I always find that really tricky, because then it could also open up a giant can of worms, or they just say, oh, we don't know how to do that, or so sometimes it's then you're like, oh, on that note, time up. So friendly, gracious people for their time.
Yeah, I think saying thank you is always, it's such a simple thing, but thank you for the opportunity to, thank you for your time. That would stand out for me. Would it be you, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something in thanking the person for their time, maybe summarising back what you've learned and what you've heard, and why you're still interested, why you're excited by the opportunity, and how you would welcome the opportunity to learn more if they've explained that there's another stage or other aspects of the assessment process. Be clear about the fact that if you do feel that way, of course, that you would like the opportunity to come back. And I think that's another piece that I think you should always leave with a good impression, because you never know when, the world of recruiting is a very small place, and you never know where you might find someone again. But I really think it's important that you also have you're assessing in that prep bits that I talked about earlier. You're assessing as well whether this place is a right fit for you. So those questions that you're asking, do be thoughtful about those, because they will give you information on top of the other things that you might have learned about whether you want to work here. And if you have a real desire and you think, yeah, I'd really like to work with these people, I've never seen any harm in someone saying, yeah, do you know what, I really feel like this is a good place that I could bring a lot to, and be clear about that.
Yeah, no, great point. There's a difference between asking for the job and showing you're interested by saying, what are the next stages, or, I believe that I would be a good fit. I like that one. My other favorite question is that, is there anything else you need to know about me at this stage in order for you to make the right decision? So it's kind of a bit of a cover-all question at the end, to leave the recruiter with the fact that you've created that good impression. Claire, what would you say as your
I mean,
tip?
I think what everyone said is brilliant. The only thing I would add is never ask a question that you could have logically found out yourself, that through your research you could have found on the website, or is sort of out there. It is always great to ask questions, though, I think, to show that you've actually got some thoughts, even if it's saying to the person interviewing you, obviously I've looked you up on LinkedIn. I was really fascinated by your career history. Could you just tell me about your own experiences, what you really enjoy about the company? How would you describe the culture? So that there's something that you can ask that you feel is sort of shows you've really thought about it and you're really keen.
Yeah, I love the question. I love the, why do you like working here? I think it's, it might sound a bit challenging, but I think it's a great question. How would you describe the culture? You can get a lot of information. Sorry, Karen, jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think to that point that Jane said earlier about listening at the beginning, because quite often a recruiter will have an introduction piece that they're giving. And I've been in a lot of interviews where I've certainly explained a certain point, and then the candidates asked it as a question at the end. And it's to that point where you're at the beginning of the interview and you do feel a little bit like, you can be a little bit not really listening to what you're being told. But in terms of that, leaving with a good impression and demonstrating that you've heard and you've listened, asking a question about something that you've been told about at the beginning of the interview doesn't create that impression.
No. Although people are nervous, and I suppose they forget that. Yeah, it is a difficult one. Okay, ladies, top tips. What would you like to? Yeah, I told you half an hour went very quickly. Top tips. What do you want to leave our listeners with in terms of your interview top tips? So, Jane, any thoughts from you? What are your top tips for people currently in the market interviewing?
So since I last looked for jobs quite a long time ago, technology has moved on so much. So there's so much help you can get. Like ChatGPT now can do interview prep with you. So you can give a job description and it can ask you realistic questions that you can give verbal responses to, and it can critique you. And you can say, make sure I'm in a star format, and which is quite amazing. Using LinkedIn to try to reach out to the organization is always really helpful. And then I've used kind of AI to turn around a presentation in less than 24 hours and make it look nice. So lots of technology tools out there to support you with interview preps.
Perfect. Thanks, Jane. Karen, what do you think? That's your top tip.
My top tip, I think, is to really focus on the impact that your skills and experience have had in previous roles and the potential that that could have for the organisation that you're interviewing with. So that storytelling piece, being really succinct with that and focusing on impact would be my top tip.
Perfect, thank you. And Claire?
Two things. Building on very much what Karen says about it's a two-way street, and it's whether you want to work for it. If you think of it in that through that lens, hopefully it'll make you feel less nervous going in, which can only be good, because I think when you're less nervous, you show your true self. And that's for better or worse, because actually, if it's not the right fit for you, it's better for that to work out at interview rather than actually you landing the job and then realizing it's not quite right. And my second tip is something that Oscar Wilde said, which is be yourself because everyone else is taken.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's classic. I think my top tip, and you've all referred to it, is around energy, enthusiasm, and attitude. Get yourself in the right mindset. When you go into this role, or go into this interview, very much around that enthusiasm, because that for me is something that differentiates over the technical stuff. Some of the technical stuff they can teach you, but if you've got two candidates who could both do the job, I'm going to choose the one with energy and enthusiasm. So thank you very much for your time today. Our next session will be in April, led by or hosted by Dean, and we haven't got the date nailed down for that one. So I'm saying look out on LinkedIn by the end of March, and hopefully join us then. So thank you very much for your time today, ladies, and for those listening, I hope you found it useful.